At what point did you actually start to investigate Orlando for the Tupac murder?
Well, we basically assisted Las Vegas police. It was their case.
Okay.
We didn't actually investigate him for the Tupac murder, but we had informants that knew us. Based on these shootings going back and forth in Compton, we're saying, well, this is why it happened, and Orlando told so and so that he did it, and they saw him with the gun, they saw with the white Cadillac coming back into Compton. I mean, they gave us different bits and pieces of information, and also our other detectives in the gang unit completed identifying him in another murder he had done maybe 6 months prior to this with another Southside member, DeAndre Smith, and they were later tried for that, or at least Smith was, and Orlando had died right before he could be tried for that murder.
So Orlando was a very active gang member.
Yeah, in order for us to come up with our theory about what happened, and we believe that's what happened, part of it is understanding what kind of person Orlando Anderson was.
Okay.
I mean, he was a hardcore gangster, and he wasn't afraid to kill anybody. We were investigating him, like Tim said, for murder prior to all this happening.
How many murders was he investigated around?
Well, I know of 3 that his name came up in.
So he was potentially connected to 3 different murders?
Potentially, yes.
And that's just the ones that you know of?
Well, we know he was connected to 2 for sure, and then one was another agency's case.
Okay. And he was being actively investigated for a murder at the time that the Tupac shooting happened?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So was Orlando ever brought in and questioned and charged or anything of that sort?
We brought him in. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, what we did, and we were very successful at it, we believe that when a war started, we would do these big multi-gang search warrants. And for this particular war that was going on between Southside Crips and Looters Park and Mob, Tim wrote the affidavit. It was like over a 40 location search warrant, which was huge, and we did it in 2 weeks. And what we did this for is not only to help us solve our cases, but we did it to help Las Vegas. We got all the players which we believe were involved on both sides in the shooting. And Las Vegas PD came down here for the search warrants. And once we got everyone arrested and brought into the station, that's the time where we got Las Vegas PD, and then we tried to interview him and find out what happened.
Okay. So you actually interviewed Orlando?
We interviewed Orlando on our cases, but we didn't interview him on the murder in Las Vegas. We had Las Vegas PD came out to do that.
Okay. Did you get the briefing from that?
Yes.
And what did you find out?
Well, we were there during the interview.
Oh, you were actually,
Yeah.
Okay, you were there during the Orlando.
Basically, I mean, oftentimes, people aren't going to admit to doing a murder, especially a high-profile murder like that.
Right.
And Orlando did admit to being there, admit to getting beaten down by Tupac and Suge and some of the mob members, but he said, "Oh, I didn't have anything to do with the murder." So that was pretty much it, and he didn't want to speak about our murder at all. So it was a short interview, basically.
I mean, that's usually how these go. We didn't really expect Orlando Anderson to admit to killing Tupac Shakur,
Right.
But we had everybody else that we heard that was with him and was on the other side, on Suge Knight's side. We had them there for everybody to get interviewed, and that's really where you find out what happened.
What do you mean? So on the mob side, what was happening?
Some of the focus when we do the gang warrants is to solve whatever gang crimes that you're actually investigating at that time. We do these warrants when a little war breaks out, and there might be murders back and forth on both sides, and we'll try to get as many of the gang members that we know were involved in these murders, including the outlying players, like somebody who might have stole a car or did something a little different, just to help out on the murder. With that, we hope that once they get in jail, and then like in this case, there was over 50 guns seized when we did these search warrants, and pounds of narcotics and thousands of dollars. So oftentimes that'll make somebody that may be on parole or might have a bad record say, well, man, I got to do something to help myself here. Maybe I'll talk to the police. I know about what happened in Vegas, or I know about this murder or that murder. And that is usually why we do a large-scale warrant like that, have several people in jail, and oftentimes we don't even have to ask them to talk to us. They want to talk to us because They want to try to help themselves out, hoping that we'll talk to the district attorney, write a letter on their behalf saying he's a cooperating witness on another case.
Okay. So by cooperating with you guys, they're getting their sentence reduced.
Possibly, not always, but it's a possibility. You know, that has to be worked out above our level with the district attorney's office. You know, we can't promise them anything. All we can say is, hey, we'll present your side.
Okay. And what were the Mob Piru guys saying?
At that time, everybody was, for some reason, I think probably because of the publicity on the Tupac case, a lot of people wanted to tell us about everything else except that case at the time.
Okay.
And we hadn't gone at all of them real hard because we had probably been up for 3 days in a row to begin with. So by the time we went back at them, some of them weren't, they will want to talk about another murder or talk about something else that might help them out. But everybody was kind of scared. And there was a fear of Suge Knight and death row. And, you know, because money buys power, you know, in the neighborhood. So, I mean, they can get to you, you know. And then not only that, money buys people off. Orlando Anderson was bought off to testify on Suge's behalf, that Suge tried to stop the beating when he got beat in the MGM.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, that was through a person I can't name, but that was there also. And when a payment was made for Orlando Anderson to go to court and testify on Suge's behalf, that the beating never, or Suge wasn't part of the beating, he was only there trying to stop the beating. And it didn't work because then we produced reports from our interview of Orlando where he had already said, yeah, Suge came up and kicked me along with Tupac and all that.
Okay. Do you know how much Orlando was paid to testify?
I had heard $20,000.
So for $20,000, Orlando allegedly testified on the behalf of the person who actually assaulted him.
It happens more than you would know.
That happens a lot.
It happens in cases. Maybe not for that much money, for less than that usually.
Gotcha. So Orlando actually got on the stand and testified on Suge's behalf.
Yes.
And it didn't work.
Didn't work.
Because Suge got sentenced anyways.
Correct.
Yeah, well, it's he said that, and then we said, no, we were there. Orlando, we heard you say that he was kicking you and beating you down just like the other ones. So what you do is you put the policeman on right after that, and they testify and show the report of what happened. And not to mention the judge looked at the video and said, doesn't look like those look like kicks to me. Doesn't look like he's trying to stop the fight to me. So, I mean, it's, you know, the preponderance of evidence, you know.
Okay. So the war breaks out in Compton. A bunch of people get killed. Orlando gets brought in for questioning. He said he had nothing to do with it. What about the other guys like Keefe D and all them? Same type of thing?
Keefe D was in custody by the feds at that time. They picked him up right around the time we did the warrants. We never questioned him.
Nope. You got to
We
remember
did. We had
too,
one of the other ones that we believe was in the car, and he said, "I'll tell you about." Well, you know, I don't even really want to go there, but no, nobody would. Nobody gave it up.
You got to remember, it's protocol. It wasn't our murder. It's Las Vegas's murder.
Yeah.
So you don't step on other investigators' toes. You have to get their permission. Say, hey, can we talk to them about your murder? If they say, yeah, go ahead, you have a better rapport with them or whatever, then you can do it.
Okay.
And a lot of that didn't happen in this case.
Oh, really? So Las Vegas PD was trying to keep it to themselves, sort
Well,
of?
not only that, I don't think they're trying to keep it to themselves. I just think they want it to go away. You know, I'm not going to talk bad about Las Vegas PD investigators because they were good guys. But I think they got, you know, pressured from a higher source politically because at Las Vegas at the time, I don't know if you remember, they were trying to make it kid-orientated, someplace where you can bring your family.
Yeah.
And Las Vegas didn't want, hey, this is a place where you can bring your family, but they're having a big gang shootout and Tupac gets killed. They didn't want none of that publicity at the time. They just wanted it to go away.
Really?
But at the same time, I don't think they knew, like Tim said, how big Tupac really was, and it wasn't going to go away.
And 20 years later, still
Right.
talking about it. You know?
No, absolutely.